Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the intricate world of elections, specifically through the lens of a handbook for a candidate chief electoral officer, GOA. You might think elections are just about casting a vote, right? But what happens behind the scenes, from who can even run to the moment votes are counted? Well, it's a meticulously crafted process. And while this handbook focuses on Goa, a lot of these regulations are pretty standard across India. So it gives you a really good window into the rigorous national framework.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is how incredibly detailed and procedural the electoral framework actually is. This handbook, for instance, it just lays out everything a candidate needs to know. It offers, well, a surprising look at the precision required to uphold a free and fair election.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is really to extract those crucial nuggets of knowledge so you can walk away, well informed
Yeah.
about this complex machinery of democracy.
We'll be exploring the whole journey, from nomination right through to vote counting, and highlighting some, frankly, surprising facts and pretty strict regulations that ensure the integrity of the process. So, what stands out to you listening right now about how elections are run? Let's get started.
Right, so before anyone can even think about campaigning, they first have to get their name on the ballot. I'm curious, what are some of the fundamental eligibility requirements? And maybe more interestingly, what are the surprising things that can actually disqualify someone?
That's a great place to start because this is where the precision really kicks in. The handbook details who's eligible and who isn't, not just constitutionally, but also statutorily. For instance, a candidate cannot hold any office of profit under the government. There's one exception, though, being a minister.
Okay, office of profit. Why is that rule so important? Well, it sounds straightforward, but it's surprisingly critical. It's basically a core mechanism to prevent conflicts of interest, to ensure elected officials serve the public interest above, say, any personal financial gain from government positions. It
Hmm.
really underscores the trust we need in our leaders.
Makes sense. What else can trip someone up?
Well, beyond that office of profit thing,
Yeah.
a person can be disqualified if they are declared of unsound mind by a competent court, or if they've been disqualified from voting before, maybe due to corrupt practices or other election-related offenses.
Right.
And it goes even further. There are statutory disqualifications for serious crimes, things like promoting enmity between different groups, bribery, also serious offenses like rape or cruelty towards a woman by her husband or a relative, or making statements that create ill will. These can all disqualify you.
Wow.
And another one, dismissal from a government job for corruption or disloyalty to the state, that could get you disqualified for 5 years.
That's a lot of potential pitfalls just to get started. Okay, so let's say a candidate knows they're eligible. What's involved in actually filing their nomination? It sounds like there's more to it than just, filling out a simple form.
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
The handbook outlines these precise, almost unforgiving steps. So candidates have to make an oath or affirmation after their nomination paper is delivered to the returning officer.
Okay.
But critically, this has to happen before the date set for scrutiny. The Supreme Court has actually clarified these specific timing limits. They said the qualification must exist at the earliest moment on the day of scrutiny. It really emphasizes how serious this commitment is.
So timing is everything there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And here's something often surprising. Candidates get multiple chances. They can file up to 4 nomination papers for the same constituency.
4. Really?
Yeah, and only one needs to be valid. It's not just like bureaucratic flexibility. It's kind of a built-in safety net. It acknowledges how complex the process is. So minor errors don't automatically disqualify a legitimate candidate.
Okay, that's interesting.
However, there's this detail. It might sound minor, but it's a critical pitfall. Leaving any blanks in the affidavit, which is known as Form 26, even for nil or not applicable.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that can lead to outright rejection. It just highlights how the smallest oversight in this meticulous process can derail an entire candidacy.
So attention to detail is paramount. What about security deposits?
Right, they vary. It's Rs 25,000 for a parliamentary constituency, Lok Sabha, and Rs 10,000 for an assembly constituency, Vidhan Sabha. And there's a concession for scheduled caste or scheduled tribe candidates. They only pay half the amount, even if they contest a general seat.
Good to know. Any other procedural hurdles in nomination?
Well, candidates are strongly advised to check the electoral roll way in advance. Look for any misnomers, inaccurate descriptions, printing errors, and get them corrected immediately. While the law does allow for corrections at the time of scrutiny, it's always, safer to fix them early.
Proactive is better.
Definitely. Then there's the scrutiny of nominations itself. That happens on the day immediately following the last day for filing nominations, unless that day is a public holiday. And crucially, only the returning officer, the RO, can conduct this scrutiny. There's only one very specific exception where an assistant returning officer might do it, but only if the RO is unavoidably prevented.
Very specific.
Very. And finally, withdrawal. A candidate can withdraw their nomination by submitting Form 5 in writing to the RO. But it has to be no later than 3 p.m. on the last fixed date for withdrawals. And the notice has to be delivered in person or by a properly authorized proposer or election agent. You can't just pop it in the post.
Wow, imagine missing that 3 p.m. deadline by just 5 minutes. Your whole campaign gone.
Exactly. The details matter enormously.
So they're not alone in this, right? Candidates often appoint election agents to help them navigate this labyrinth. Who can, and maybe more importantly, who can't take on that vital role?
That's a really important question. Touches on the integrity of the process. Basically, anyone disqualified from being a member of parliament or a state legislature or from voting is also disqualified from being an election agent.
Okay, that makes sense.
What's more, the Election Commission has specifically instructed that certain people cannot be appointed. We're talking union or state ministers, MPs, MLAs, MLCs, and anyone provided with security cover. They can't be election agents or even polling or counting agents.
Why is that, the security cover part?
It's a practical reason. Their security personnel cannot enter polling stations or counting centers. And obviously, you can't just leave high-profile individuals without their security detail.
Right, logistical issue. How is the agent actually appointed?
It's done using Form 8. And interestingly, that form itself serves as the election agent's identity card. Needs their photo attested by the RO. And if needed, an appointment can be revoked using Form 9.
Okay, so nominations done, agents appointed, they're on the ballot. Now the real work begins. Campaigning. But this isn't a free-for-all, is it? This model code of conduct sounds pretty comprehensive. What does it actually mean for how candidates interact with the public?
Oh, it's incredibly comprehensive. And the whole point is to ensure a level playing field and, prevent undue influence. Parties and candidates must avoid activities that might aggravate existing differences or create hatred between, say, castes, communities, or religions.
Basic respect, essentially.
Exactly. Criticism should stick to policies and programs, not someone's private life. And appeals to caste or communal feelings for votes or using places of worship for propaganda absolutely prohibited. And then there are the outright illegal things, corrupt practices like bribing, intimidating voters, impersonating voters, and canvassing within 100 meters of polling stations on polling day. All big no-nos.
What about things like rallies and processions?
For public meetings and processions, parties or candidates have to inform the local police about the venue and time well in advance. This is so the police can make necessary arrangements for traffic and security. And loudspeakers, there are limits. Can't use them before 6 a.m. or after 10 p.m.
Sensible.
Plus, there's a strict ban on any public meetings or processions during the 48 hours leading up to the end of the poll. That's often called the silence period.
Right, the final stretch. What about plastering posters everywhere?
Defacement of public property. Wall writings, posters, banners, not permitted on any government premises at all. Here for other public places, local laws apply. And the key principle is ensuring equal opportunity for all parties. You can't just dominate a public space.
It sounds like every public action is under scrutiny. And what about the actual campaign materials they use? Can they just print anything, or are there surprising rules about what goes on a poster? It's not at all. Printing and publishing materials are heavily regulated. Again, it's about accountability and preventing, anonymous or misleading propaganda. Printers must include their name and address, that's called the print line, on all election pamphlets and posters.
Okay.
And they also have to submit 4 copies of the printed material, along with a declaration from the publisher, to the district magistrate or chief electoral officer within 3 days of printing it.
3 days! That's quick.
It is. And violation can actually lead to the revocation of the printing press's license. So it's serious.
Wow. What about those dummy ballot papers candidates sometimes use?
Right. Candidates can print dummy ballot papers. They can have their own name and symbol showing where they are on the real ballot. But, and this is important, these dummies must not contain the names or symbols of any other candidates.
Ah.
And they have to be printed in colors that don't resemble the genuine ballot papers. Genuine ones are pink and white, so dummies should be, say, brown, yellow, gray, something distinctly different in size and color. Got it. Campaigning, naturally, costs money, and we hear a lot about election finances. This seems like a critical area for transparency, and probably potential pitfalls, too. What are the strict rules about tracking and reporting expenses?
This is truly a cornerstone of financial integrity in elections. It's really vital. Every single contesting candidate must keep a separate and correct account of all election expenditures.
All of them.
Yes, from the date they are nominated right up until the results are declared. This even includes money spent before nomination if the materials or services are used after nomination.
That's comprehensive, and then they have to report it.
Yes, a true copy of this detailed account must be lodged with the district election officer within 30 days of the result declaration.
And if they don't?
Failure to do so, or lodging an incorrect account, can lead to disqualification by the Election Commission, and that's for a period of 3 years. It's under Section 10A of the Representation of the People Act.
3 years is significant.
It absolutely is. Now, here's a point many find interesting: the travel expenses for star campaigners.
Ah, yes, the big names parties bring in.
Exactly. These are recognized leaders of political parties. Their travel expenses are actually exempted from the candidate's own election expenses. But there's a condition. Their names must be communicated to the Election Commission and the Chief Electoral Officer within 7 days of the election notification.
Okay, so there's a process.
There is. And another wrinkle. If other people involved in the campaign who aren't star campaigners share transport with a star campaigner,
Like hitching a ride on the helicopter?
sort of, yeah, then 50% of that leader's travel expense for that specific journey gets apportioned to the candidate's expenses.
Interesting calculation. How is all this checked?
District election officers conduct inquiries to make sure the submitted accounts are, in fact, correct. And the Election Commission appoints observers specifically to watch for any misuse of money. If discrepancies are found or expenses seem unreported or inaccurate, notices are issued to the candidates.
So there's active monitoring.
Very much so.
Okay, beyond rules for candidates themselves, there's also this vast network of personnel and security measures to ensure everything runs smoothly on polling day. How do they create that secure, conducive atmosphere we hear about?
It really is all about proactive measures. The Commission uses something called vulnerability mapping.
Vulnerability mapping, what's that?
It's a process to identify areas or specific polling stations that might be prone to voter threat, intimidation, or undue influence. Based on this mapping and other factors like maybe social group domination in an area, inaccessibility, or even a history of violence, they deploy micro-observers. These aren't the main observers, they're specifically for these sensitive spots.
And who do they report to?
They report directly to the main observers, providing ground-level intelligence.
And what about general security?
Significant numbers of Central Police Forces, CPF, are deployed to states holding elections. This is based on ground assessments, specifically to maintain law and order and build voter confidence.
Makes sense. What about helping voters on the day? It can be confusing finding your polling station sometimes.
Absolutely. To help with that, voter assistance booths are set up, especially at locations where there are multiple polling stations in one complex. These booths are manned by officials who have the electoral rolls, and they simply help voters find their name and the correct polling station number.
That's helpful. Are there rules about vehicles on polling day? Candidates zooming around?
Yes, strict rules. Candidates are allowed one vehicle for their own use, one for their election agent, and one more for their workers or party workers.
Just 3 total per candidate?
Per candidate for the constituency, yes. And these must be regular four-wheelers, three-wheelers, or two-wheelers. No huge convoys. And crucially, no more than 5 persons, including the driver, are allowed per vehicle. Plus, these vehicles need a permit issued by the district election officer or the returning officer. They can't just use any car.
Okay, strict limits. What about inside the polling station? Who gets in and what are the rules of conduct?
Access is tightly controlled. Only authorized persons are allowed inside. That includes voters, polling staff, candidates, their election agents, polling agents, observers, micro-observers, authorized media, and child accompanying a voter if needed. And certain behaviors are strictly prohibited. For instance, polling staff or agents cannot, fiddle with the voting machine or cast votes when no voter is actually present.
That seems obvious, but good. It's explicit.
It is. Also, officers are not allowed to accompany voters into the voting compartment unless it's a case of assisting a blind or infirm voter, which has its own procedure. And that 100-meter rule is back. Canvassing within 100 meters of a polling station is prohibited. Soliciting votes, exhibiting election notices, other than official ones, all banned near the station.
What about disruptive behavior?
Using loudspeakers, shouting, or generally acting disorderly in or near a polling station is also punishable. It's all about maintaining order and sanctity.
How do they manage potential impersonation? Those lists of voters who might have moved or passed away.
Right, there are specific procedures for handling lists, often marked as ASD, absentee, shifted, and duplicated dead voters. Polling agents, representing the candidates, are expected to have these lists. If someone whose name is on that list comes to vote, the agent should immediately draw the presiding officer's attention to challenge the identity.
So the agents play an active role there.
A very active role.
Okay.
Finally, if an elector is blind or physically infirm and genuinely needs a companion to help them vote inside the booth,
Yes.
the companion must be at least 18 years old and has to make a declaration. They have to state they haven't already acted as a companion for another voter that day, and importantly, that their own finger isn't marked with indelible ink from having voted themselves.
Another check and balance.
Exactly. Every step has these built-in controls.
Now let's turn to the actual voting process itself. For many people, this might seem like a bit of a black box. You go in, you press a button. What actually happens, and how do they guarantee the integrity of that single vote?
All right, this is where technology meets trust. We're talking mainly about the electronic voting machines, the EVMs, and the voter verifiable paper audit trail, or VVAPATE systems. The EVM is designed to be simple, robust, and this is absolutely crucial. It's a standalone machine.
Meaning no internet connection.
Exactly. No network connectivity whatsoever. This prevents any possibility of external interference or manipulation through hacking or remote access. It just can't happen. The control unit, which is the part that stores all the vote data, has its program burnt into a microchip on a one-time programmable basis.
One-time programmable?
Yes, meaning it cannot be read, copied, or altered after it's manufactured. It's locked down. EVMs also use dynamic coding between units and have real-time clocks with date-time stamping for every key press, adding layers of security.
Okay, so it's secure by design. Walk us through the actual voting moment.
Sure. So once your identity is verified, you get the indelible ink mark on your finger. You sign or put your thumb impression in the register. Then the presiding officer presses the ballot button on their control unit. You'll see a busy lamp glow red on the control unit. At the same time, over on the balloting unit in the voting compartment, a ready lamp turns green.
That's my cue to vote.
That's your cue. You press the blue button next to the candidate and symbol of your choice. Immediately, the ready lamp on the balloting unit goes off. A small lamp next to your chosen candidate's button glows red briefly. And simultaneously, the VVPAT unit prints a paper slip.
The paper slip?
Yes, that slip shows the serial number, name, and symbol of the candidate you voted for. It's visible through a little window for about 7 seconds.
So I can see confirmation.
See it. Then the slip automatically gets cut and drops into a sealed box in the VVPAT. You also hear a distinct beep sound from the control unit back on the presiding officer's table.
The beep means?
The beep confirms your vote has been successfully recorded in the control unit. And instantly, the balloting unit automatically locks itself, preventing any more votes until the presiding officer enables it for the next voter.
Okay, so it's not just pressing a button. There's a whole sequence, a digital ballet almost, happening behind the scenes. Very secure. But before the real voting even begins on polling day, there's a critical step involving the candidate's agents, isn't there? A kind of dress rehearsal?
Precisely. That's the mock poll. It's a absolutely vital transparency measure. It's conducted about 1 hour before the official poll start time. Ideally, polling agents from at least 2 different candidates should be present.
And if they're not, say only one agent turns up.
Good question. If agents from 2 candidates aren't there, the presiding officer waits for another 15 minutes. If still no one else arrives, they proceed with whoever is present, even if it's just one agent. But they have to make a specific note of this in the mock poll certificate.
What's the purpose of the mock poll?
It allows the agents to physically verify that the EVM and VVPAT are functioning correctly. They cast test votes for various candidates, check the VVP slips, and crucially, they confirm that the machine's memory is clear that there are 0 votes recorded before the actual poll starts.
A clean slate check.
Exactly. After the mock poll is done, the results are cleared from the control unit. Then, the unit is meticulously sealed. We're talking paper seals, special strip seals. The presiding officer affixes their signature on these seals, and very importantly, any polling agents present are also allowed to put their signatures or marks on these seals.
Why is that important?
It ensures that the machine cannot be tampered with or opened after the poll officially commences without breaking those seals that the candidate's own agents have signed. It builds trust.
That sounds like a robust check. But what if, despite all these measures, say a voter alleges that the VVPAT slip showed a different candidate than the one they actually pressed the button for? That's a serious accusation. How is that handled?
It is serious, and there's a specific procedure, Rule 49MA of the Conduct of Elections Rules, to handle it. This is critical for voter confidence and dispute resolution. If an elector makes such an allegation, the presiding officer first has to warn them about the consequences of making a false declaration. It's actually a penal offense.
Okay, so they understand the gravity.
Yes. Then the presiding officer obtains a written declaration from the elector detailing their complaint. A second entry about this specific incident is made in Form 17A, which is the Register of Voters. Then the elector is permitted to cast a test vote. This happens right there, in the presence of the presiding officer and any polling agents who are present.
Everyone watches them cast this test vote.
Yes. They vote again for the candidate they originally chose. Everyone observes the VVPAT slip that prints. If the voter's allegation is found to be true, meaning the VVPAT slip indeed shows the wrong candidate, then the presiding officer must immediately stop the polling at that station.
Stop everything.
Stop everything and immediately report the matter to the returning officer for further instructions from the Election Commission.
And if the allegation is false, the slip matches their test vote.
If the slip correctly shows the candidate they pressed the button for during the test vote, confirming their initial allegation was incorrect, that fact is recorded, and the elector's signature or thumb impression is taken against that record in Form 17A. The initial vote recorded stands.
So there's a clear process, but it relies on that test vote verification.
Correct. It's a way to address genuine errors while deterring frivolous claims.
Okay, so polling is finally done. The last vote is cast. The machines. They don't just get tossed onto a truck and driven away, right? Is it really that simple?
Oh, absolutely not. The post-poll security of EVMs and VVPATs is, well, paramount. It's fundamental to electoral integrity. After the poll concludes, the presiding officer completes all the paperwork, seals the machines securely again in their carrying cases again. Agents can add their seals. Then the machines are transported to a designated storage location, usually called a strong room.
Under guard.
Under strict guard, often including central forces. And here's another transparency measure. Candidates or their authorized agents are allowed to accompany the vehicles carrying the polled EVMs and VVPATs back to the storage center.
They can follow the truck.
They can follow, though they usually have to arrange their own transport. Once at the storage center, the machines are placed in the strong room. Candidates or their agents are allowed to affix their own seals on the doors and windows of the strong room, right alongside the official seals.
So they know it hasn't been opened.
Precisely. And a logbook is meticulously maintained, recording every single entry and exit from the strong room area. The entire process, sealing, transport, storage, is typically videographed.
And if the strong room needs to be opened before counting day for some reason?
In that unlikely event, all candidates and their agents must be informed in advance, and they have the right to be present when the strong room is opened and resealed. Full transparency.
What happens if something goes wrong during the poll itself, like tampering is discovered later?
Right. If, say, during the scrutiny of the voter register, Form 17A, or other documents, evidence of tampering or serious irregularities that vitiated the poll at a station is found, the Election Commission may declare the poll at that station void and order a fresh poll, a repoll.
A completely new election at that one station.
Yes. For such repolls, new EVMs and VVPATs are drawn from the reserve list. They're clearly tagged for the repoll. The original machines from the voided poll are tagged not to be counted and stored securely alongside the repoll machines until the election petition period is over.
What if a poll is just interrupted, say, by bad weather or a disturbance, but not completely ruined?
That's different. That's considered an adjourned poll. In that case, the poll recommences from the exact point it was stopped. Only those electors who hadn't already voted before the adjournment are allowed to vote when it resumes. The original machines and records are used.
Okay, clear distinction between a repoll and an adjourned poll.
Yes, very different procedures.
The tension builds and builds up to the counting day. What's the process like when the votes are finally tallied? It sounds like it must be just as meticulously planned as everything else.
It truly is. It's a highly structured event designed for maximum transparency and, again, to prevent any kind of manipulation. Take the staff involved. The posting of counting supervisors and counting assistants is randomized in 3 stages.
Randomized. Why?
To prevent anyone knowing far in advance which specific table or constituency they'll be assigned to. The final allocation, which specific assembly constituency segment and which counting table they'll manage, is only disclosed when they arrive at the counting center on counting day itself.
Adds a layer of impartiality.
Exactly. And on top of that, micro-observers are also appointed for the counting process. These are usually different from the polling day micro-observers, typically central government or public sector undertaking employees. Their job is to sit at the counting tables, note down the vote details directly from the EVMs as they're displayed, and report independently to the Commission's main observer. Another layer of checks.
Okay, so the staff is set up. What gets counted first?
Counting always begins with the postal ballot papers, and this now includes electronically transmitted postal ballots, or ETPBs, mainly for service voters. There's a fixed time for the commencement of counting, say 8 a.m. Any postal ballots received after that precise time are not counted. The deadline is strict.
Can postal ballots be rejected?
Oh, yes. They can be rejected for several reasons. Most commonly is the declaration by the voter, that's Form 13A, which confirms their identity and signature, is missing or not properly signed and attested. And any re-verification or recounting of postal ballots, if requested and permitted, must also be videographed.
While the postal ballots are being counted, what about the EVMs?
Right, while the postal ballot counting is happening, usually at the returning officers table, the assistant returning officers can begin the process of counting votes from the EVMs at the other tables. For this, only the control units of the EVMs are needed. The balloting units and VVPATs actually remain securely stored, usually in a separate strong room, unless there's a VVPAT slip count needed later.
So just the control units come to the counting hall?
Correct. They're distributed to the counting tables, usually one polling station's control unit per table. The counting then proceeds round by round. If there were simultaneous elections, like for Parliament and State Assembly, the tables in the hall are typically divided equally between the two.
You mentioned observers earlier. What's their role during the actual EVM counting?
Observers play a really critical role here, too. They have the authority to randomly select 2 EVM control units during each round of counting. They then direct the counting staff to independently verify the results displayed on those machines against the results recorded on the table-wise result sheets, Part 2 of Form 17C. It's a random audit check for discrepancies.
A spot check.
Exactly. And observers have significant power. If they find evidence of serious issues like booth capturing or severe tampering that might have altered the results, they can direct the returning officer to stop the counting, or even not to declare the result for that segment pending Election Commission orders.
So they have real authority. Who actually gets inside the counting hall? Is it crowded?
Access is very, very strictly limited. Allowed inside are the counting supervisors and assistants, Election Commission authorized persons, public servants on duty related to the election. But that explicitly excludes police officers unless called in for law and order. Also excluded are ministers, MPs, MLAs, MLCs, unless they are candidates themselves.
So no VIP gallery.
Definitely not. Also allowed are the candidates, their election agents, and their appointed counting agents. And crucially, no security personnel accompanying any of these individuals are allowed inside the counting hall itself.
How many counting agents can a candidate have?
Each candidate can appoint as many counting agents as there are counting tables, plus one additional agent for the returning officer's table where postal ballots are counted. So if there are, say, 14 counting tables plus the RO's table, a candidate could appoint up to 15 counting agents.
And where do they sit? Is it first come, first served?
No, there's a specific seating arrangement. Priority goes to agents of recognized national parties, then recognized state parties, then parties registered but unrecognized, and finally independent candidates. It ensures representation based on party status.
Okay, so the control unit is opened, votes are tallied. How is the result formally recorded?
The votes for each candidate are ascertained from the control unit's display. This data is recorded in Part 2 of Form 17C, which is the result of counting form for that specific polling station. This form is prepared in duplicate. It must be signed by the counting supervisor and also by the candidate's counting agents present at the table. They get a copy.
Agents get a copy of the result for each machine.
Yes. One copy goes to the returning officer to compile the overall result, and the other copy is specifically for photocopy and distribution to the counting agents right then and there. Transparency again. All these Form 17C Part 2 are then compiled into the final result sheet, which is Form 20.
What about that VVPAT paperslip verification you mentioned?
Right, that's mandatory now. There is a compulsory verification of VVP paper slips from one randomly selected polling station per assembly constituency or per assembly segment in case of a parliamentary election.
You've won randomly.
Yes, selected by a draw of lots, usually in the presence of candidates or agents. The VVP slips from that machine are physically counted and compared with the electronic count from its control unit. If a candidate requests it under specific rules, verification of more VVP might be done.
What if a machine is found tampered with during counting?
If a control unit is found to be tampered with or fails to display results, the returning officer doesn't count the votes from that machine. They immediately report it to the Election Commission and wait for directions. If the commission orders a fresh poll for that station, the counting for the constituency is adjourned regarding that specific station. All the machines and papers related to that count are sealed up again. Candidates' agents can affix their seals and counting resumes only after the fresh poll is completed.
So, the counting is done, results are declared, the winner celebrates. But the election doesn't truly end there, does it? I imagine there are still crucial post-election procedures and maybe some broader rights to consider.
Indeed, you're right. There are important mechanisms to address outcomes and ensure long-term accountability that kick in after the results. For instance, consider someone getting elected to multiple seats. This happens sometimes.
Like winning in two different constituencies.
Exactly, maybe 2 parliamentary seats, or perhaps 1 parliamentary seat and 1 state assembly seat in simultaneous elections. Well, a person cannot be a member of both houses of parliament simultaneously, nor can they be a member of parliament and a state legislature at the same time.
So they have to choose.
They absolutely have to choose. The law, specifically Section 70 of the Representation of the People Act, 1951, and Article 101(2) of the Constitution, says they must resign all but 1 seat. And they have a deadline. Within 14 days from the date of the election declaration, or the declaration date of the last election if dates differ.
14 days, what if they don't resign?
If they fail to resign from all but 1 seat within that time frame, all of their seats become vacant. The law is quite clear. It emphasizes the need for a single, undivided commitment to representing 1 constituency or house.
A clear consequence. What about that financial accountability we discussed earlier? Does that come back after the results?
Yes, absolutely. That requirement to lodge the detailed election expense accounts within 30 days of the result declaration. That's a critical post-election procedure. And just to reiterate, the penalty for failing to do so, or failing to do so correctly, disqualification by the Election Commission for 3 years.
So the paperwork continues well after the votes are counted.
It does. And the district election officers conduct inquiries to verify the correctness of these submitted accounts. The Election Commission actively sends notices to defaulting candidates to get these resolved quickly. It's not just a formality, it's enforced accountability.
Okay, shifting focus from the candidates for a moment. What about the fundamental right of every citizen to vote in India? What are the bedrock principles here, and maybe any surprising limitations?
This is really the heart of India's democracy, enshrined right in the Constitution. Elections are based on adult suffrage. That means, under Article 326, every citizen who is 18 years of age or older is entitled to be registered as a voter unless they are disqualified.
What are the grounds for disqualification from voting?
The main disqualifications for being registered on the electoral roll are not being a citizen of India, being found of unsound mind by a competent court, or being currently disqualified from voting due to corrupt practices or other serious election-related offenses.
So citizenship, sound mind, and not having committed major election offenses.
Pretty much. And critically, no person can be enrolled as a voter in more than 1 constituency, nor can they vote more than once in the same election, even if their name somehow appears twice.
1 person, 1 vote. What about people in prison?
That's a specific limitation. Generally, individuals confined in a prison, whether under sentence or under trial, or those in lawful police custody, are not allowed to vote in an election. There are some very limited exceptions, like people held under preventive detention.
Interesting. What about the NOTA option? None of the above.
Yes. India provides the none of the above, or NOTA option. It appears on the ballot panel, whether it's an EVM or a traditional ballot paper, right after the name of the last contesting candidate. This allows electors who, for whatever reason, do not wish to vote for any of the candidates in the running to still exercise their right to participate and register their decision to abstain from choosing.
But it's still a secret ballot.
Absolutely. Choosing NOTA is done with the same secrecy as voting for a candidate. It allows voters to express dissatisfaction without boycotting the poll entirely.
And finally, thinking about us, the public, how transparent is this whole incredibly complex process? Can we as citizens actually look at the results and the records, or is it all locked away after the election?
Transparency is definitely built into the system in several ways. It's not all hidden. For example, key documents like the final result sheets, that's Form 20 we mentioned, and the formal declaration of results called the election return, or Form 21E. These are considered public documents, meaning they are available for public inspection. You can also obtain certified copies upon payment of a standard fee, so the official outcomes are accessible.
What about all that videography you mentioned at various stages?
That's another key transparency element. Important events throughout the election cycle are systematically videographed. This includes things like the first-level checking of EVMs before the election, the randomization processes for staff and machines, the storage and movement of EVMs, the mock poll, the sealing process, the counting itself, especially the postal ballot count, and any VVPAT verification.
So visual records of critical moments.
Exactly. These video recordings become part of the official election record. It emphasizes accountability and provides evidence should disputes arise later. It's a way of showing that procedures were followed.
What an incredible deep dive, seriously, into the meticulously organized world of Indian elections. From those really granular details of candidate qualifications, the disqualifications, the forms, right through to the high-tech security of the EVMs and VVPATs and the very strict protocols for vote counting. It's just clear that ensuring free and fair elections is a massive, massive undertaking.
It really is. And the sheer depth you find in a handbook like this, it just highlights the incredible commitment to electoral integrity. You realize that every single rule, every procedure, however small it might seem, is designed with a purpose: to minimize error, to prevent malpractice, and ultimately to build and maintain public trust in the democratic process.
Yeah.
It's quite a powerful testament, I think, to the complexity behind something as seemingly simple as just going in and casting a ballot.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does all this detail, this complexity mean for you, the citizen, and perhaps for the future of democracy itself?
It really raises an important question, doesn't it? In an era of, well, constant information overload and sometimes misinformation, how crucial is it for us to understand these rigorous frameworks that actually underpin our democratic processes? And maybe a provocative thought for you to consider as we wrap up. How might knowing these intricacies, these details of election management we've discussed today, actually empower you to engage more critically, perhaps more confidently, with future electoral discussions and the decisions that shape our society? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and often hidden world of election handbooks and procedures. We really hope this exploration has given you a newfound appreciation for the incredible depths of democratic processes.